Okay, and I will just throw it right to our panelists to kind of go around, do some introductions, maybe give a silly fact about yourself if you're feeling it.
I can start us off. Hey everybody, my name is Brielle King. I just graduated from Norwich University with a degree in mechanical engineering. I'm just a big nature lover and love everything science and science fiction. Two silly things about me I can think off the top of my head. I have 2 webbed toes on each of my feet, and I also practice Viking martial arts, so full contact Viking battle reenactments.
Hello, everyone. I'll follow Brielle. My name is Alden Ducharme. I'm a student at the University of Vermont studying middle-level education, which is not really technology related. And you're like, why am I here? I love technology and I do take coursework related to that. I'm just not getting a degree in it. I'm a longtime GIV alum. I've lost count of the exact number, but love GIV. And a silly fact about myself. It's hard because you don't really recognize it as silly when you're doing it, but I'll do a fun fact. I've been struck by lightning and can't really remember any of it. So kind of bizarre. And I will let that close me off.
I can go next. My name is Daniel Graves. I'm also a GIV alum for quite a few institutes. And I go to Brown University studying environmental science. I'm super interested in sustainability and also technology. I'm probably not going to study that very much, but definitely really interested in that side of it. A silly fact, I guess I could say that I probably get more bloody noses than anyone in the entire world. They're a regular occurrence for me. But.
I'm Connor. I'm a junior in high school. I've been to 2 GIV institutes and I'm going to another one this summer. And I really like science, especially like astronomy and biology. I want to be an astrobiologist for NASA. And goofy facts about myself. I don't know. I'm sort of blanking, but it's not really goofy, but I just got some succulents yesterday and I just like dyed my hair a few days ago. And so those are pretty exciting recent developments.
I guess that just leaves me. My name is Phoenix. I am a CTE and EHS senior for computer system technology. And I will be going to the Southern New Hampshire University for electrical engineering in the fall. And I guess a silly thing about me is I actually got a tattoo over a couple months ago, and I accidentally had them leave out a little bit of the spot on the tattoo. So there's a big just blank circle in the middle of my tattoo. And I think it's kind of silly and I plan on leaving it. So.
Thank you all. Thank you for sharing these silly facts. I feel like I've already learned a lot about everyone here in a way that I'm very happy about. Okay, so I think from there we will segue as naturally as is possible from having someone use the word segue between two things into a sort of discussion on the bigger picture of sustainability, because as we've all sort of talked about prior, it's more than just kind of reaching that net zero. So I'd love to just kind of kick it to you guys and let it kind of flow from there. Does anyone want to start us off with kind of like their thoughts on those bigger picture ideas?
I think a nice thing to start off the conversation would be going over the like 4 pillars of sustainability that are pretty widely accepted or used. Which I have like a billion tabs open right now. So I was doing a lot of reading about this. So the 4 are social, human, economic, and environmental. And those are like widely used. One thing that I did find about these that I was like, whoa, is that when you're looking at corporate sustainability, they only use 3. And so, okay, well, I don't want to speak for every corporation ever, but through a lot of my findings, I found most corporate sustainability goals were based off of just 3 of them, and they left out human, which I was kind of like, huh, I don't know how I feel about that. But
What's the difference between social and human?
I think human is more access to services, nutrition, education, health, that kind of stuff. So the very like, other than education, like the very physical parts of our body. And then social would be more like cultural sustainability or things like that. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. That was my understanding.
I think that definitely makes sense, at least for a conversational framework for us. I think the human thing kind of ties into what we were talking about with your work environment and how humans have been taken out of the whole work setting, except for a few key examples. You talked about how like Google gets noted for all their interesting creative things that they do for their employees to increase sustainability, especially in the tech industry, would be an example of the human environmental sustainability, I guess. So it's the human environment.
I think it's a challenge sometimes to try to balance all of these pillars just naturally by the fact that like oftentimes they're in direct conflict with each other. Like if you have people that are all about economic growth and creating a prosperous economy, which I mean, that's not necessarily even should be a goal, but that is just in direct conflict with pretty much the other 3, I would say. So it's a real challenge to figure out how we can kind of merge all of these to make sure that we have like we're meeting the goals of economic growth, if that's what we want, while we're keeping everyone healthy and happy and giving everything they need and making sure that the environment is sustainable for the future. But on the other hand, I think that you can go in the other direction and say that if we're being sustainable with the environment, that's being sustainable for humans because it will inevitably down the line lead to a better human quality of life, a better economy, better social structure. So I think there's 2 sides of the coin. You can think of it both ways. I like to think of it in the positive way because it's more hopeful, I guess.
It's definitely like I found through like what I've read and things that really, if you want to ensure sustainability for all the other types, you really have to kind of rethink your whole concept of economic stability, because economic stability in terms of capitalism is sort of inherently incompatible with human and social and environmental sustainability. And really you have to like look at, can a really sustainable economy may look more like a more sort of socialist or even like communist kind of economic structure. And so, you know, like you have to look at kind of what sort of economic system are you trying to improve or make sustainable in correlation with other forms of sustainability.
You know, I think something that Daniel was talking about that is more complex than people realize is that there's not sort of like one, or not that Daniel was talking about, but to build off of what Daniel was saying, there's more, it's way more complex than people think, because each part of the world has different systems, right? Different populations are affected by these unsustainable practices disproportionately. And so we have different parts of the globe working oftentimes against each other in terms of what they're prioritizing and how it affects each other. So in terms of creating a prospering economy, the US created an ozone layer hole the size of New Zealand over New Zealand. And so that wasn't really, you know, working with our fellow humans across the globe, but we have all of these groups of people working in entirely different ways, and I wish that we had a little bit more communication, because I feel like we could speed things along a lot easier.
Yeah, it seems that we need some kind of framework that allows us to work together as a species, you know, because there are plenty of things that affect everyone, but we all, as Alden said, we have our own different regions and we have our own different cultures, and not one thing is going to be right for everybody. You know, that would make no sense. And so being able to have our own sort of regional systems, but being able to link that into a global plan that makes sense for everyone, or for like in some way, how does everything make sense? It's hard to make everything equitable. And how do we remediate some of the environmental injustices that have already been done? You know, we're certainly, America's not the only one responsible for the hole in the ozone layer, but somebody is, like, somebody, we got to fix that, right? So who takes care of it? Does New Zealand, because it's above New Zealand? That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, tying that in with the technology aspect, there's this term that I really like. It's called appropriate technology. It just refers to building technology that is suitable for the circumstances that it's used for. So like a computer that is used in the United States is basically useless if you bring it to like Haiti or something, because they just don't have the structure to utilize it. It would be much more useful to for technology that like that works within the environment. And so I think a lot of times in terms of thinking about like human sustainability or social sustainability, we think about like providing aid to other countries. And that sometimes works, but I think it might be more useful to think about how we can provide aid to help those other countries or other places like build the structure within themselves, because they know what they need, and they know what type of technology works for them. And we can't really just dictate what happens or what technology is needed to be implemented. And if you work around human beings, then that's much more sustainable for those human beings, because you're accepting what they need and trusting that they have their best interests at heart.
you know, an example of that that's not even like using something as complex as a computer is Tom's shoes. I don't know if anyone has ever purchased or seen them, but when you buy a pair of Tom's, they like send a pair of Tom's to, I think, Africa. This is going off of a couple of years ago. I don't know if they've changed that policy or not, but they basically destroyed the market for shoemakers in Africa who were making a living off of making shoes. And they like bankrupted families and communities that were like a shoemaking community. And so that's, I think they still do that. But like I used to buy Tom's and now I'm like, no way am I buying Tom's anymore. But it's just, you know, you can have these desires to help and you can act on them, but a lot of these communities and organizations need to think about, is this helping them help themselves, or am I forcing help upon them that might be doing unintentional harm?
I mean, like, I feel like along with that, there's like a lot of generalization done about different regions. Like, people think like Africa in general is like everywhere needs the same kind of resources. And like, I don't know, I feel like sort of you have to have a good and like clear understanding of specific communities before you start introducing like different like things from your own economy into those communities, because you know, yeah, like with that, right, if you introduce your own shoes that come from somewhere else into a community that already has people who make shoes, right, then that's going to take away from people buying their shoes. But if you know, find a community that doesn't really have as much access to people who make shoes, then maybe you can introduce some, you know. So it's like, you know, where you have to really look into like what you're doing and what you're giving and where you're giving it to. I think.
Connor, it sounds almost like you're talking about like a cultural ambassador. So that way that culture is still represented, and what they do in that culture for maybe their money, their traditions, is still respected and kind of not brought down in the process of trying to build them up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's sort of like what I'm saying, because like, yeah, like if I definitely think that helping people to have what they need in order to build themselves is the best thing. But if like for short term sort of help, right, you really have to be careful about that and really analyze how it will affect the specific environments and communities that you're introducing it into.
I want to draw attention to kind of what's going back and forth in the chat here. Brandon put on the gumshoes and went to Tom's website, where he has uncovered that they now invest a third of their profits into grassroots organizations and events instead of the buy one give one model. And Alden, if you're all right, kind of elaborating on what you said in response, I think that ties into what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, sure. So I was just saying that that's a wonderful development in terms of creating a sustainable economy set up for growth by those communities affected, rather than just sort of forcing help. I mean, there's the whole, I don't know enough about the topic to address it directly right now, but if anyone wants to speak to it, the whole issue with like ecotourism and and sort of going somewhere and thinking that you're helping, but not really. So I was just happy to hear that they are investing in sort of these grassroots organizations at such a large percentage of their profits.
As far as the ecotourism thing, I think it's hard to sort of investigate one thing and try and pull on every single thread you think you could find and find out, oh, is this actually a net positive, or is that just a marketing shtick for this company that is just painted green on the outside, and is actually just, gold on the inside. When I think instead of having to necessarily take on such huge chunks like that, we can sort of, I think there are other, like, I'm thinking of Tom's shoes, because I'm like, the top of it is hemp or cotton or something like that, but the bottom is made out of rubber or plastic. It's some kind of foam, right? And I don't know of any clothing companies that also or especially shoe companies that have like, I can't give my shoe back to them and they're going to repurpose it or recycle it in a way that, or recycle it at all. The clothing industry in general is so pollutive, and if we don't necessarily have to worry, is my entire vacation or that trip going to be green? It's like, but now every single clothing choice I make, I'm going to consider the impact of that. And maybe even, because obviously people complain to Tom's and we're like, dudes, that is not cool. There's some other way you could do that. And if we can do the same thing with clothing companies, then, because I want to say textiles make up, it's something like a third of the bulk in our landfills. It is absolutely insane. And one thing Connor brought up when we were talking before was the issue of microplastics. And most of the microplastics come from our clothing. They come every single time you wash your clothes, that it's releasing microplastics into our rivers. And I see the look on Elizabeth's face. Like, that's what I thought too. It's unbelievable. And you don't have problems like that with technologies that we've had for hundreds of years, cotton and hemp. It's wild. And I don't know if it's as simple as just asking these companies to not do it anymore, or simply not buying it, which is one way of asking them to not do it. But somebody, I also don't think it's fair to put all of the responsibility on us as consumers when we're not the ones making the money on this product. And like, if the cost of doing business included the entire cost of doing business, that includes taking care of your trash, and not just leaving it for somebody else to deal with.
Yeah, that really made me think of, like, kind of like changed my idea on the, like, sending things over for like temporary fixes, because yeah, that's sort of pushing microplastics onto their environment without any sort of question. And yeah, with the using plastic and different harmful, like, chemicals and things and manufacturing, a lot of, instead of tried and true, like, very more eco-friendly materials that we know of and that we've used in the past, really just relates back to what is cheapest for manufacturing. And that all relates back to capitalism, right? That corporations want to spend as little as possible to make as much as possible. And unfortunately, plastic and different materials that aren't as good for the environment are cheaper for them to produce on a mass scale their products. So although, like, hemp would be, like, great and has so many amazing uses, a lot of companies won't use it because it's slightly more expensive than something else that they could use instead. And that kind of goes back to, like, the economic system, because if you have a system that isn't as focused on the accumulation of capital, then it would be a lot easier for us to implement more eco-friendly materials into our manufacturing processes.
I don't even think we necessarily, to solve that problem, I don't think we necessarily need to choose an entirely different economic system, although I think we should. If simply the cost of like, it's cheaper for them to produce those because they don't have to pay to deal with the remediation of it. The environment gets to pay, and the communities of West Philadelphia get to pay for that, not those companies. And so if the actual price of the item from cradle to the grave was included in the cost, then it would no longer be cheaper, and it would then be cost effective to go to something else like wool or you know, and there certainly are appropriate uses for plastics, but clothing, in my opinion, is not one of them.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, no, I don't think that like the responsibility for being eco-friendly and for properly disposing of things should be put onto the consumer at all. And yeah, that is a great point, that if all of that cost is factored in, then they would make different choices.
I think I really like the idea of thinking about how we incentivize different actions, because if like these corporations and basically everyone on some level makes decisions based on how cheap something is, and if we just make things cost what they're actually worth in terms of what they do to the environment and what they do to people, etc., then people will make choices that correspond to the actual cost. And I, you often hear like the term reduce, reuse, recycle. And usually people just end up thinking of that as just recycle, because that's the easiest one to do. You just put your paper and your plastic in the recycling bin and forget about it. But if we like change the framework of our economic system to kind of incentivize buying less things, incentivize reusing things, then it will kind of complete that whole cycle with all three of those pillars.
I mean, before we were talking about textiles, but also another big industry that kind of we need to look at that reuse and the reduce part is definitely the technology based and electrical based, because we still don't really know how to handle electronics waste. We kind of just ship it off. The United States ships it off to other countries and have them deal with it, but the impact that we're giving on those other countries are deadly to the people who are handling the electronics, the people who are actually recycling it, versus someone trying to use the computer that's outdated by 3 years for just until it essentially dies and burns its course out. Is kind of a good example of trying to reduce, or maybe not having to buy the latest iPhone every year, even though they're almost identical.
Phoenix, I'm so glad that you brought up tech stuff, because when you consider that there's kind of a movement in engineering and also in DIY and stuff called repairing, and there's actually a concentrated effort in the tech lobby to make it illegal to repair your things. Plenty of things you have, there's a label on it that if you open it, your warranty is void, right? And you essentially don't own that item. That company owns it, and if one thing breaks in there, even though it's really easy to just get in there and fix it, your course of action is to throw it in the trash and buy a new one, which isn't fair to anyone involved, the people who have to make it, the people who have to deal with the trash afterwards, or you as a consumer who could just easily get in there and fix it. I think of like all of my appliances. My blender broke and I took it to a repair cafe, and they just old timers who really like to fix stuff. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so good at fixing blenders. And there was just one little thing wrong with the motor and it's still fine. And I got this at the thrift store. It's like 30 years old, and just that little. And so now when I went and got a new cell phone, I first went to ifixit.com and looked at their repair scores. The iPhone, they're getting better and better scores, but the iPhone gets a pretty poor repair score because you cannot get in there and fix it. Most of these phones are one freaking piece. that if one thing breaks, the whole thing is broken. But that is not, I don't know if some of you are old enough to remember phones that had batteries you could take out. You know, they can make phones that you can replace the camera. They make modular phones that you can replace every little piece of it when it breaks, instead of having to replace the entire thing. And so that's just another shift in our thinking that kind of changes the whole picture and allows you to, like, it changes the picture of what your footprint looks like, but also what your outlook on the world can look like, and what you demand from these companies in return.
It just made me think of when I was really little. I used to like take like the old Androids that my dad like upgraded out of, and there was like at one point I was like taking the battery out. I had 2 batteries that fit into one phone from 2 different phones. The other phone broke, so I had one phone where both batteries broke, and I would like alternate the batteries. So I'd have like I go, because you could charge the battery on its own, because like I think like the port for the charger just went directly into the battery or something like that. I don't know. But it was like I like switched the batteries, and I remember like the batteries were like the most valuable part for like selling to like different kids because like they could get like a phone without a battery very easily. There's this whole trade between young children and selling old phones where like they wouldn't care as much about the actual phone part, but more about like the battery, because the batteries like burn out and stuff more often than the phone actually breaks. And so they'd have like these phones that like would be fine, but they're missing a battery. And so I would like sell a battery for like $5 to like my friend that block over and but
You know, that makes me think about how some companies allow repairs, excuse me, but incentivize you not to do them. So years ago, when I got my first iPhone, it was the 4S, and the front of the screen broke. So the front screen broke, but so I bought a repair screen, and I was just going to go in and do it myself because I didn't want to go somewhere and spend money or buy a new phone. But to repair the front screen, you need to go through and take every single piece out from the back and then replace the screen and then put everything back in. Goodness, sorry. And so that not only incentivizes people not to repair their phones themselves, it also incentivizes these third-party repair companies to raise the price because of how long it takes, right? We have increased labor, and it's more complicated. The possibility for something to go wrong has increased dramatically. So not only can they just say like, don't repair it, you know, we can make it illegal, we can void your warranty, but they can also say, repair it, but do you really want to repair it? You know, so just, gosh, makes me angry.
And tying into that in the chat from Zoe, she says, not to be cynical, but it seems like in most cases, it would be sustainable for people and the environment is the exact opposite of what makes companies money / I think we're all kind of in on that same page. Brandon mentioned as well a hobby of his, assembling plastic robots called Gunpla, and a new model line, making them out of like recycled and defective parts of other model kits. Again, like feeding into that the actual recycle, the actual reuse. But that certainly does seem to be like we're kind of few and far between on instances like that. I see that unfortunately you cannot eat them though. They're still not safe to eat. Shame.
Going to Zoe's point at the top, I think there's 2 sort of answers to that almost, right? There's the immediate looking at environmental sustainability and seeing that it's in almost direct opposition for economic growth. Then there's like the long term, right? These companies can only profit off of the environment while it's thriving. You know, these aren't sustainable resources. They don't renew. So it would be in the best interest for many of these companies to sort of exploit the environment in a sustainable way. But but they're not thinking about it in the long term because they know that their competitors won't, right? Their competitors are going to, well, like Samsung's going to do it, so why shouldn't Apple, you know? So if there were some way to sort of widespread say, hey, we need to all pause and figure out how we can exploit the environment in a sustainable way, that would make it so those two spheres of sustainability aren't in direct opposition. It's just how the heck do we do that? Super complicated.
Well, I mean, since we've kind of been bringing up Apple so much, Apple has the tendency to kind of recycle their older products and revamp them in a way that makes it more appealing to purchase them. So like what I'm actually calling on right now is an iPhone SE 2020, which uses the same body as the iPhone 8, but the interior of the newer iPhones. And they kind of gimmick that as a, oh, we're recycling to make it look more appealing to those that are more conscious about what they're trying to purchase. And same with, I believe they also are recycling the lead that is in older iPhones and putting it into the new iPads. If I'm not mistaken, somebody can look at that. So they are in some ways trying to make it more eco-friendly while also making it, I think, what, $600 to repair an iPhone screen when the screen itself only costs about $50. So they're definitely using both their reduce and their reuse to their benefit at the same time as making it the more plausible option.
So Brielle, I went onto the website that you linked, the ifixit.com, that sort of ranks a lot of these smartphones and other smart devices. And one device that I saw was the Microsoft Surface Duo, which is sort of a like foldable Surface that ranked a 2 out of 10. And one of the bullets that it lists is that their batteries are glued in. And, you know, I don't know if anyone has any theories as to why someone would need to glue a battery in, but that seems to me just straight up like, don't take our batteries out. Like, we are making it so you cannot. Does anyone have an idea of why?
Aside from them just being pure evil, it could also be a safety thing that they just to really discourage people from doing that. But at the same time, put that in the manual that like, hey, look, it's pretty dangerous to mess with these batteries. We really don't recommend it. You know, don't make it where it's impossible to fix it.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I have a sort of limited understanding of the tech, but I feel like gluing in batteries would make it really easy for the glue to just melt. like things overheat, right? Like that doesn't sound I don't know.
So I actually know the reason that some of the, especially their older devices, like the older Microsoft devices and the older iPhones, etc., actually glue in their batteries is because those batteries are lithium ion batteries. They're soft, pliable little batteries. So if they're loose, they have the tendency to fold and in doing so, it could cause it to explode. Kind of like oh, my iPhone might explode in my pocket, or my phone might explode in my pocket. It's kind of like that. Gluing it to a metal frame helps reduce the impact that it will receive. But what they have done in newer devices, such as the newer iPhones, the newer Android phones, the newer laptops, they use what are called removable strips. They're adhesive strips, kind of dual-sided, but they're called pull tabs, I guess. And you can pull them out from underneath the device, underneath the battery, to safely remove it. But yes, it is incredibly dangerous to pry a battery like that out of there. They're well aware of it. And it's a little concerning how many places continue to do it even after knowing it. And what Connor was bringing up, the adhesive that's used in them it would damage the battery to the point of explosion before the adhesive would give out due to heat. So the battery itself would die before the adhesive would release from the phone.
All right, cool. I figured it was something like that, but just the concept was like
So I think we've talked a lot about how things are bad. Does anyone have any sort of, Daniel, I know you shared a lot of links earlier. Oh, sorry, that was Connor. Does anyone have any positive sort of things that are going on, or projects that they heard of, or possible avenues of making communities or parts of the pillars or spheres more sustainable? I can talk about some, but I'd love to hear from other people if they have any ideas.
I mean, the main like positive thing that I researched somewhat was that there's sort of a move in Africa for the management of resources to be shifted from colonizing powers and like private companies to community-based like ownership and management, and that's like cool and just better for the like environmental sustainability of the area and the economic sustainability of the area. But that's all that I have to contribute.
I think even if, I mean, I don't have any specific examples, but I think there seems to be a general sense that at least that people are thinking about this more and more often. And in general, I find that like usually things will start in the general public and then corporations will kind of catch on. At least that's what it seems like. So, I mean, I have hope that if we keep talking about this type of thing, that it will kind of force it upon those people who actually have the power to change things. But
For some reason, that just made me think of The Sims. I play The Sims 4 like religiously, and they have like a pack called the Eco Living Pack, and it just reminded me of that. They have like solar panels that you can put on your sim builds, and like a machine that like turns trash into like little, I don't know. I don't have it, but it just made me think of that for some reason.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about during our previous talk, Daniel brought up, and it's one of the pillars I don't remember what the pillars were. I hope maybe one of them was eco, or just the environment, but like the impact that some of our actions have. Oh, it was about going beyond just like a net carbon zero and considering the impacts on the wildlife in the area and things like that. And one kind of my favorite thing, and I think Vermont is so incredibly well suited for this, they're like wildlife highways, bridges over highways. I don't know if anyone has ever actually built one. That I just put a link for, that's just a model of one. But just little things like that. I mean, none of us are civil engineers, but somebody in a civil engineering department, all they have to do is make a proposal like that. I mean, you don't even have to be that. You just tell your city to do it, you know? And Vermont is so incredibly well suited to be the spearhead on so many of these things because we're so small and it's so easy for us to, and we're really cohesive, at least on environmental issues. Vermonters love Vermont and they love their moose and everything. And it's so easy for us to set a good example. And I think it's kind of our responsibility as that brave little state to do things like that, that set the tone for the rest of the country.
Yeah, when I moved to Vermont in like 2018, I was like very, very surprised and taken aback by how much community involvement there is in everything. Like there's like town hall meetings and like stuff like that's not a thing here in Kansas. I thought that was like an old-timey 1800s thing that they did before they had like phones. I didn't know it was like a thing. And there's like no sort of like kind of activism or anything. I mean, the most that anything does here for like mutual aid or like just helping people and helping the environment are like community service that the state and judges make like people convicted of things do, and churches that have like food banks, and that's about it. And there's just not really a lot of there's not like a culture of kind of caring about each other here. It's weird. It's just there's a feeling of stagnation, where in Vermont I experienced a feeling of, you know, let's make this better, let's move forward, let's progress. And here's just not like that. People are just like, it is the way it is, and that's the way it's supposed to be, and that's the way it'll always be. And if you don't like it, you move to Denver. That's it. So no, I found that as really cool in Vermont, and something that sort of, I mean, I want to move to Denver. I want to live in Denver, but it kind of makes me think about, if I did stay here, what could I change? And it's just interesting to think about.
Connor, I love everything that you just brought up, and I'm going to move subjects from it, but not in a way of that was useless. So I just wanted to point that out there. But I was reading the chat and I saw that Elizabeth asked, is there a role that GIV immersions can play in sort of looking at sustainability and things like that? I think that's she's nodding yes. Okay. So when I was working with the Engineering Institute 2 years ago, I think now, we were all about sustainability, and I think Brielle can talk about last year's, maybe, I'm not sure what exactly went on, but all 3 of our strands were working with like solar power or hydropower, and looking at sustainable and renewable energies. And it was just some of the most inspiring things to look at. As someone who's not in an engineering field, I was watching these GIV students and participants work with the Norwich faculty and the current Norwich engineering students help design like a better future. And I just felt, I remember one point walking into a room and like, the future has like a chance, you know. I'm like, if people are getting these experiences in high school so early on, it just gave me a lot of hope. So I think GIV immersions in person, we're certainly doing that. And I hope that they were continuing a bit during their online section. Brielle, can you talk a little bit about maybe what went on at the engineering immersion last year?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of the same kind of thing. We did a lot of solar energy. We built little solar cells and learned about wind power. I think just learned a lot that they just, and I think to tie this back into what Connor was saying, I think it gave students the talking points that they need to bridge the gap with their older parents and with people who don't understand this technology, who might just dismiss renewable energies offhand because they assume that that it's not good enough, that it can't, that nope, the problem is too big and there's no way we could ever be without a coal power plant. There's no way solar can work. They learned about microgrids. Like, I never knew what microgrids were in high school, but we also have to remember that high schools in Kansas are not learning these things. High schoolers here in Kentucky and where I'm from in Oklahoma are not learning these things. And it's not enough for just Vermont high schoolers to understand how a microgrid works. But just to the point, I think we can even, and one thing that maybe we were missing last year that we could have given the students even more was helping specifically, how do you talk to older people or people who don't know anything about this? How do you talk to them about these technologies and make them because we kind of, I don't know, maybe it's because younger people are, I'm not saying older people aren't compassionate, but we're like already given to these ideas that we need to help other people, and we get that I didn't make that huge pile of trash, somebody else did. I don't want to do that same thing in the future. But I think giving them the tools that they need to express these ideas to help spread it, because there are certainly people in Connor's community who need to hear the ideas that he has.
Yeah, we're learning about energy in my physics class here right now. And we were talking about all the different ways that you get energy. And it was just all the basic ones like solar, hydro, nuclear. We didn't even focus that much on hydro at all. And we didn't focus that much on wind either. It's, I don't know. And I said with I had the opinion that, I am kind of scared of nuclear power, and I feel like the potential effects that it could have if something went wrong probably aren't as worth it. And I don't know, there's and I just with other things like talking about fossil fuels and stuff, I was like, there has to be better alternatives and ways that we can reduce electrical waste, because that's a huge part of it, is kind of the efficiency of the connecting sort of just wires and things that bring electricity from one place to another. But I don't know, there's just there's a sort of defensiveness for the way things are. So if you try to theorize different paths and different opportunities and different ways that you could change or improve the current system to be more eco-friendly and find more alternatives, there's always someone that's going to push and be but that can never happen because we won't be able to convince these people or this and this, and it's we aren't really looking for a counter argument because we haven't even formulated our argument yet. We're just brainstorming, and it's I don't know. It's the whole thing.
I think that's super important that's a really good point you just made. I haven't even made my counter argument yet. I'm just saying, could we maybe do something that doesn't destroy the environment? Is it possible? Can we at least ask that question? But I think to your point about them getting instantly defensive, and I think this is one reason why we could all do it with training on how to have these conversations. I think some people, it's sort of implied like, you guys did it wrong. How could you have been so stupid you fell for that? Which that's not at all what we're saying. Like, there used to be a debate about whether or not cigarettes were dangerous for you, and they were not labeled. So, my grandfather, I don't think he was stupid for smoking cigarettes. They didn't know then what we know now, but now we do know it. And we're not judging our parents' generation for what they did, but it's time to take responsibility.
And with that, we have come up on 3 o'clock, which I want to be conscious of everyone's time. I know we're running from 2 to 3. If anyone has like a last question or anything like that, I think we should field it. But I know that it is Sunday afternoon, and everyone does have lives and all that stuff. I want to make sure that everyone gets to live them. I'm wondering if I should do like a countdown. Does that feel, no, that's stressful. We're not going to do a countdown.
Thank you, Ross, for putting this on, organizing it and facilitating it. We
Thank-
appreciate that.
Thank you for making my Sunday immeasurably better. This is exactly what I want to be doing with these exact people. So thank you all. Thank you all for being here. And thank you for contributing to the conversation in such meaningful ways. I'm really excited to see where all of this goes, because I think if the ideas and the energy in this room, this many rooms across many spaces, is any indication, I am with Alden. There's a very real hope there. It feels like good things can come of it. Oh, it's my cat Wesley. That's what is being gestured to. Wesley is ostensibly the host of this program. He has never made an appearance on a single one of these. So thank you, Zoe, for turning the camera to Wesley for this bookend.
He's on his break, I guess, but
Well, he's always on his break, isn't he? Okay, it was great. It was great to see all of you. Hold on, I will stop our recording. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Well,
I am more optimistic